girls coming? You want to come? No? Hey, all right, just get cool. All right, I'm going to have you guys turn right here, right? Because they want to see you. They don't want to see me, so I'll just stand over here on the side. Guess what I want to be when I finally grow up? I did. I wanted to be a doctor in a bad way. There's a couple of things about being a doctor, though. I wasn't good at science. And it's kind of a problem if you want to be a doctor and you weren't good at science. You never see anything. You guys ever looked in the microscope? Can you see stuff in it? All I can see were my eyelashes. It was really bad. It was just awful. And so being a doctor kind of went out the window. But do either of you want to be doctors? Too bad. You're going to be a doctor today. You to be a doctor, you have to have gloves. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a special kind of doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon. And I even know why I wanted to be a doctor. It was a profound reason. Because I watched the television show MASH. And, you know, there were surgeons on MASH, and they seemed like they had a good time. And they were funny, and you know, it sounded like a good idea. So I was going to be a surgeon, except I wasn't any good at science. The reality is, though, a doctor, you guys aren't allergic to latex, right? Oh, not. And so we'll have a different kind of children's sermon where we watch you, like, explode and have pies on, and that would be kind of fun. And then we get a doctor. Anyway, and you have to have a surgical mask. That's always fun. The reason I wanted to be a doctor is, the reality is, I like helping people. And so I thought if I were a doctor, I could help people, you know. Somebody comes into the doctor's office, they have a runny nose, you stick that little flashlight up their nose, then you write, you know, something in Latin on a piece of paper, you know, called prescription, and you end up helping the person. They go home feeling better after they take that piece of paper and go to the pharmacy. And I like the idea of helping people, so being a doctor made a lot of sense. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, am I doing this right? Yeah, does it look okay? Maybe I should change professions now. It's not too late. The reality is, you guys can be a doctor. I was reading the book of Proverbs the other day. I don't know if you guys are reading the book of Proverbs. Is that covering your eyes or something? You're going to be a very good doctor if you cover your eyes. That's better. That's perfect. Okay, you guys ready? I don't have a stethoscope for you, sorry. Look, here's the cool thing. I was reading the book of Proverbs the other day, and all of a sudden I read this verse, and I'm like, this was like 3 weeks ago, and I went, wait a minute, I could be a doctor without being a doctor. Because doctors do this. Yeah, they cut on you, they sew you back together, they look in your nose with a flashlight, they get that prescription pad out, or now it's probably a computer, you know, and they just send a prescription in. But they hand you a prescription that makes you feel better. And I was reading in Proverbs, and here's my little prescription pad on my Bible, and a prescription pad, and it says this in Proverbs 17. A cheerful heart is good medicine. A cheerful heart is good medicine. I wrote in my Bible right next to it that I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor to people, and I'm going to hand out cheerfulness to people. What is their prescription here? If you walk up to somebody and you're cheerful, that's good medicine to them. Well, there's only one problem with my theory. If you walk up, are you smiling right now? She is. But who would know it? Is she smiling right now? Is he smiling right now? See, the only problem is, oh, here, sorry for ripping your head off. There you're smiling. Look. And you know what that makes people do? It makes them happy. Let's go. Look at that prescription. A cheerful heart is good medicine. You and I, we can be doctors without ever going to medical school. This is great. I can save you 8 to 12 years of school. You guys can be doctors. Because a cheerful heart is good medicine. You to put a smile on your face. You walk up to one of your friends who's having a bad day, you have a smile on your face, you say, hey, how are you doing today? They're going to tell you, I'm having a lousy day today. You say, well, there's a reason to be happy. And your happiness, your cheerful heart will be medicine to them. So, I have a suggestion. Let's go into medical practice, the three of us. We're kind of be partners in our medical practice. And the people that we run into, let's be doctors of happiness to them. A cheerful heart is good medicine. That's not going to work. That's better. That always works. All right. Let me pray for you guys. Father, we can be doctors without being doctors. We can be cheerful with people. We can be cheerful with the people that we hang out with all the time. The people we love, our families, our friends, people we encounter at school. Help these two to be the best doctors Covington ever saw. And help them to inspire people with their good medicine of happiness. We pray in your name. Oh, now watch this. I learned how to do this. Take the glove off so that the dirty stuff's... No, you have to keep those on for the whole service. And then with this hand, you wad up the dirty one, the soiled one, and you do it like this, and now all the dirt's on the inside. I'm going to ask you guys at the end of the service if you start the gloves on. You don't have to, okay, go away. Go away. I got to tell you, going to the session meeting the other night was great, and we were talking about buying these cases of Bibles. I don't know how. Those of you that are like me that grew up with the King James Bible, translated in the era of Shakespeare, probably the most abundant translation out there. I don't know how you guys read it. I teach Shakespeare, and I have to work at translating Shakespeare to 18-year-old language, but boy, to read the Bible in that, that's just tough business. And so I said to the session, hey, is it possible that we could buy a case of large print Bibles that are New International Version, translated 1984, Modern English Version, very good translation, and also a case for the high school kids. It's the same translation, but it's just formatted for kids. And Ron said, wait a minute. So you're asking us if it's okay to buy Bibles? And then he laughed. I think that was his approval. And I said, no, what I'm really asking for is the session to spend about $200. That's what I'm really asking for. But the answer was still the same. Of course. The Bibles aren't for sale. If you'd like to make a donation, whether or not you need a Bible, you want to make a donation to that fund, that's great. If anybody needs a Bible, I mean, the cases are up here. The large prints are really nice ones, and helps those of us that have aging eyes a little bit, get the letters a little bigger. And then this one's called Backstory. It's just a Bible, but it's formatted for kids. So these are here for you. You know, for the last, what says January 1? We've been looking at the book of Proverbs, and we've been working on this series of trying to find principles in the Bible that are worth living by. And the book of Proverbs is just like a whole series of bumper sticker principles. It's just all the way through there. And I don't know how you're doing on your read-through. I made it all the way through January. I'm now, today's the 10th. I'm 10 chapters into it in February. This is the last Sunday I'm going to preach on the book of Proverbs. We're going to turn our attention to other things. But if you have your Bible today, does anybody want one of these right now? Yeah? Anybody else want one? Got them? Turn to Proverbs chapter 10. Yeah, except I think I nodded at that side. Do I want to take my bib off? Proverbs chapter 10. We're not going to take the time to read the entire chapter of Proverbs 10 like we have been doing, but I just want to read the first few verses. And as I read it, here's what I want you to notice. That in Proverbs chapter 10, there is this contrast going on. And in almost every verse for the first 6 or 7 verses is this extreme versus that extreme. It's the wise, it's the fool. It's the lazy, it's the diligent. Just pay attention to the contrast of wise and fool, righteous and wicked, lazy and diligent, or person who is remembered or person who is not remembered. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1. A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. Ill-gotten treasures are of no value, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the cravings of the wicked. Lazy hands make a poor man, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Blessings crown the head of the righteous, but violence overwhelms the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the righteous will be a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. Oh, you can keep reading the rest of the chapter, but you got to do that on your own. You remember when, well, you probably don't remember when you were born, but when you were a little kid, you probably grew up in a house somewhat like mine. When you were born, they published your name and birth date in the newspaper, and that prompted a salesman to knock on the door sometime in that first month. And now with your parents, these proud new parents, the salesman knocked on the door and said this: I understand there's congratulations, dude. You have a new little one. I bet your little one's going to grow up and be a smart kid. You know, I could help with that smartness. I have the World Book Encyclopedia set that you could buy for however many $100 it was, and it was a red cover, and it took up this much. Yeah, you're all not me. And your parents, no disrespect intended, your parents were as dumb as mine. You're a month old, and they just buy you an encyclopedia set that you will not be able to read for 5 or 6 years, but even though you'll be able to read in 5 or 6 years, you won't read it for another 12. And it won't be until you're 14 that you have to do a report in your freshman year of high school, and you actually open up those encyclopedias, and guess what? They're 14 years old at that point. All that information is, I mean, penguins really haven't changed, but any person that you do a research paper on using an encyclopedia, it's ancient. It's just so outdated. Well, guess what? We live in a modern world. You don't need the World Book Encyclopedia anymore. You just need the internet. And there's this great thing, and as an educator who teaches research papers, Wikipedia sounds wicked. Is it Wikipedia? No, Wikipedia is a fairly reliable online encyclopedia. Have you ever wondered this? If they were to write an encyclopedia entry about you, what would they say? It's about your reputation. What you're known for, what you've done, where you were born. What's your reputation that would end up in Wikipedia? Lance Armstrong's been in the news a lot this week, last couple weeks. So I Googled him. Lance Edward Armstrong, born Lance Edward Gunderson, September 18, 1971, is an American former professional road racing cyclist. That's the first sentence. Armstrong won the Tour de France a record 7 consecutive times between 1999 and 2005 before being disciplined from each of those races, disqualified from each of those races and banned from cycling for life for doping offenses by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency in 2012. It didn't take him 3 sentences until his reputation was trashed. But Wikipedia didn't trash his reputation. He did. I looked up Richard Nixon. First sentence. I looked up Pete Rose. 4 sentences of baseball. And then, of course, gambling on baseball. I looked up Barry Bonds. He made it all the way to the 3rd paragraph before his reputation came out. And then I read the book of Proverbs, and I read chapter 10, verse 7, and I read this really nagging, wonderful nagging verse. We just read it, chapter 10, verse 7. The memory of the righteous will be a blessing, but the memory of the wicked will rot. And I wondered, what would they write about me? What's my reputation? You've probably heard what Warren Buffett has to say about reputation, and he's got a pretty good reputation for a very wealthy, very famous man. He said this: it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. How many of you have heard that expression from Warren Buffett? But you know what he goes on to say? I didn't. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. And he has. Ben Franklin adds to that wisdom. He says it takes many good deeds to build a reputation and only one bad one to lose includes it. And now Solomon adds to it. The name of the righteous, that will be blessing. The name of the wicked, it'll rot. You know, I don't think I'm going to say anything you don't know this morning, which is going to make some of you say, then why are you still talking? But I want to talk about reputation. And I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't know. First thing is this. Everybody has one. In the book of Proverbs, in chapter 10, you saw the contrast. You're either wicked or you're righteous. You're either diligent or you're lazy. You're either the righteous who will be remembered or you're the wicked whose name will rot. Everybody has a reputation. The challenge isn't in having one. We all have one. The challenge is accurately knowing what yours is. So if you want to know what your reputation is, don't look in the mirror too much because we tend to not perceive it very clearly. If you're really courageous, if you're really brave, ask the people that love you. Hey, honestly, really, I want to know the truth. What's my reputation? What do people say about me, or what would people say about me? Or you can even frame it in that, if they were going to write a Wikipedia entry about me, relax. None of us are famous enough to ever have a Wikipedia entry. Thank you, Jesus. But what do people say about me? What vibe do I give off? Now, they'll probably start with the gracious stuff. You know, the reality is, you're a really generous person. Good, thank you. There's a but in your voice. But you like to talk about your generosity. How about this one? You tend to trust people right in the beginning. You just hand out trust. And people love that. They're really attracted to you because you just love on them and trust them right from the beginning. Yeah. But if somebody violates your trust, it's next to impossible to get it back. So ask the people. Everybody has a reputation. You knew that before you walked in the door. What's your reputation? You're probably not accurate about your own, knowing what your own one is. So ask the people that love you, what's my reputation? Here's another thing we already know about reputation. A good reputation is something that you should want and do want. You don't want to be known as the creep. You don't want to be known as an idiot. You don't want to be known as impatient or angry or foolish or lazy. You want a good reputation. And the book of Proverbs talks about that later in chapter 22. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Silver or gold is a good thing to want. It's a good thing to have, too. You know, isn't it interesting? We spend a lot of time investing in getting good jobs and getting an education and furthering ourselves so we can increase our paychecks, so we can provide for ourselves and our families, so that we can pack money into the bank, so that we'll have plenty of money to last way beyond our death so that we can leave something for the next generation. We spend a lot of time talking about, thinking about that, planning about it, meeting with financial counselors. I taught a course last summer in summer school called Personal Finance, and we went through Dave Ramsey's material on how can you live like nobody else so that you can give like nobody else. I mean, financial planning is really, really important, and we give a lot of attention to it in our culture. And then we read Proverbs 22:1. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed better than silver or gold. If spending all that time and effort and strategy and meeting with financial planners and teaching courses on it and taking courses on financial planning, that's all good. But God said even more important than that is carving out a good reputation. I just find great irony in this. We will have experts meet with us about our financial future. Do we have experts meet with us about our reputation? Do we give any kind of attention to what kind of a reputation? What am I doing now to help my reputation later? We do it with our stock funds. Why don't we do it with our reputation and our good name? But you knew that. How about this one? Good reputations are built over time. It's just like investing for your retirement. Man, the earlier you start, the better off you are. Well, yeah, good reputations are like that. They take time to develop. Warren Buffett was right. It takes 20 years to get a good reputation and 5 minutes to ruin a reputation. But it takes 20 years to get a good reputation. Reading in the book of Proverbs, I read this verse in chapter 3. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. The two traits that God identifies, if you want a good reputation, here are two traits that you have to develop: love and faithfulness. But think about why did God pick those two? Those two things need to be dangling around your neck and written on the hard drive of your heart. Why love and faithfulness? Why are those the two things that promote a good reputation? You will have a good name if you have these two. Both of them take forever. You know, when we bring a young couple to the front of a church and we marry them and we help allow them to speak vows to each other in the presence of God in the company of these witnesses, what do we say to those young couples in the vow part? Do you pledge in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty, for better or worse? And what's the last part? Until death do you part. Will you stick it out? Because true love is something that lasts for a lifetime, and you commit for a lifetime, and you develop it over a lifetime. And those of us that have been married more than 10 minutes, we know that that kind of development of love, you learn to love more and more and more the more time you spend. When you're in the dating years, this is Valentine's week, and you're just going out to dinner and having a great time. Is it hard to be in love? But when your spouse is thrown up with the flu, or in the hospital, or struggling with melancholy, or in a bad mood, or struggling with a job change, or with an irritating habit, is it difficult to love? Sure. God said, man, love and faithfulness, those are the two traits that will give you a good reputation, a good name among God and men. All right, so everybody has a reputation. A good reputation is something we should want, and it's going to take time to get one. But we need to be human here. What happens when you go into that 5 minutes Warren Buffett was talking about? You spent 20 years developing a good reputation, and in 5 minutes you wash it out. What happens then? 5 years ago, I went through a bad time. It lasted about 2 years. I was just in a bad mood for about 2 years. And it was all work-related. I was so frustrated at work. I loved my classroom. I loved my students. I just didn't like the people I worked with or the people I worked for. So I just kind of stayed in my classroom an awful lot, didn't go to lunch, didn't socialize with the other teachers. I was just in a bad mood for about 2 years. And in that 2 years, I developed a reputation as somebody who complains about everything. Teachers' meetings, I was the guy with my hand up. So what are we going to do about that? Probably nothing, right? And then it hit me. I kind of woke up one day and I went, this is not helping anything. And I can't keep going like this. How do you reshape your reputation when you've had that 5 minutes of blowing your reputation, of reshaping, of washing away years of building it? What do? I got great news. I'm so glad you're in church. I don't know what Warren Buffett would tell you, but I'll tell you what God says. God is a redemptive God. And our reputation with God at the very beginning of our relationship with God was not a good reputation. God didn't say, hey, I'm so glad you got it all together and you've had 10 years of a great reputation. Now you can be one of my children. No. Our reputation with God started when we were scum. It started when we were sinners. You read the New Testament sometime and you'll read verses like this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. You'll read what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ. Even when we were dead in our transgressions and sin, it is by grace you've been saved. So I got great news. If you are in a time period or ever have been in a time period where you're in your 5 minutes, I'm going to ruin 20 years of reputation right now. Boom, you're in it? I got great news for you. God is a forgiving, redemptive God. And he says, you come to me. You bring your sin to me, I will forgive you. All you have to do is say, will you please forgive me? And it's like, ooh, forgiven. And in the Old Testament, the metaphor that God uses for it is so strong. I love this metaphor. God says, I will take your iniquities, your sin, your failures, your mistakes, your bad reputations, and I will throw them into the sea of my forgetfulness. And they'll sink to the bottom, and I'll never remember them again. If you've gone into that 5 minutes of, I have a bad reputation, ask forgiveness. Because guess what? God is redemptive. And God wants us to get it right. And he planted that in that whole picture in the universe. Guess what happened this morning at 6:04? Sun came up. The darkness ended and the sun came up. Every single day, God reminds us visually, if you go through darkness, the sun's coming up. Because God is a redemptive God. Now let me say something to husbands and wives, moms and dads, and maybe even grandparents and that. If God can forgive us when we sin, if God will let us restore reputation, can we do that too? Can we say to our spouses, man, you're really good. I got a long list of how many times you blew it. Can we say, you know what? Reputation wiped clean. It's a new day. Let them start over. Say to your spouse, say to your kids, whatever you did yesterday, it's gone. That's yesterday. The sun came up. God forgave you, I forgive you. Let's start rebuilding that reputation. Socrates said it this way, the way to gain a good reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear. And good old Henry Ford, you can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. You have to do it. Wise words from our Lord and from some important people. May God add his blessing to the reading and explanation of